Hello. In this week's Torah portion, Kedoshim, we are enjoined not to hate. Quote, Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Let's explore this matter in some detail. The Talmud says, quote, Why was the first temple destroyed? Because the people engaged in the three main sins, idolatry, sexual immorality, and murder. But why was the second temple destroyed, given that in its time the people were occupying themselves with Torah, observance of mitzvot, and the practice of deeds of kindness? Because senseless hatred, sinat chinam, prevailed. This teaches you that senseless hatred is considered as serious as the three sins of idolatry, sexual immorality, and murder combined. Unquote. These are powerful words. Is the Talmud implying a connection between observance and senseless hatred? Can one care too much, so much that the slightest disagreement causes hatred? Let's try to understand this statement. My purpose is not to knock observance, far from it, but understand how far it is proper to go and how tolerant one should be of those who observe less or differently. In Talmudic times, there were many divisions in the land of Israel, some religious and some political. The Pharisees, who were the rabbis of old, preached the oral law and emphasized the world to come, or olam haba, that is, the afterlife. Their rivals, the Sadducees, did not accept the oral law, did not believe in the world to come, and were by and large wealthy aristocrats. There was a monastic sect called the Essenes. There were Christians and followers of other would-be messiahs. Many Jews were Hellenized or Romanized, secular in their outlook, while others exhibited very intense religious fervor. There were Jews who opposed an uprising against the Roman occupiers, and among them were spies and collaborators. And there were many Jews who encouraged an uprising, among whom three different factions of zealots, or chinam. So, as the Talmud says, even though the majority were punctiliously observant, these groups harbored intense hatred towards one another, and this led directly to Rome's victory and the razing of the temple. So clearly it's not enough to be technically observant. The hatred towards those who think differently must go also. One is reminded of a prayer uttered by a little girl. Dear God, please make the bad people good and the good people nice. The Talmud offers many examples of senseless hatred. There we learn that Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 students died of disease because, quote, they did not treat each other with respect, unquote, in their religious disputes. This was decades after the temple was destroyed. It says that they died of askera, which Rashi interprets to be diphtheria. The Maharal adds that the disease blocked the power of speech, a punishment he deems fitting to the crime. The Midrash adds that they practiced stinginess of spirit. They felt that another student's success in Torah diminished them. Rabbi Akiva had to start over with just 7 students. The numbers may be exaggerated, but the main message is not. In Talmudic days, the school of Hillel was always pitted against the school of Shammai. In the end, the Sanhedrin decided to rule according to Hillel. Why? Because it says Hillel's disciples were kind and humble, and always quoted the other side's opinion before their own. Quote, Rabbi Abba stated in the name of Shmuel, for 3 years there was a dispute between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. The first saying, the law agrees with us, and the second also saying, the law agrees with us. Then a heavenly voice, a bat kol, was heard saying, Ellu ve'ellu divrei Elokim hayim. These and these are the words of the living God, but the law agrees with Bet Hillel. But since both are the words of the living God, what was it that entitled Bet Hillel to have the law agree with them? Because they were kind and modest, and studied both their own rulings and those of Bet Shammai, and were even so humble as to mention the opinions of Bet Shammai before their own. This teaches you that God raises up those who humble themselves and humbles those who exalt themselves. that greatness flees those who seek it and follows those who flee it. Unquote. Now let's offer some definitions. First, what is senseless hatred? Rashi says that it is hatred of people who have not committed any action justifying the hatred. Okay, but the next question is then, when does the hatred make sense? The Talmud answers, you may bear ill will towards someone if you witnessed him engaging in an act forbidden by the Torah. However, you must assist him quickly before assisting those you love, so that the ill will does not turn to hatred. Now, how do you know that you have reached the point of hatred? The Talmud answers, quote, a hater, a soneh, is someone who does not speak to his fellow for 3 days because of enmity between them. So what is the difference between what caused the fall of the first temple and what caused the fall of the second temple? Before the fall of the first temple, the people sinned out in the open, then repented. Before the fall of the second temple, the people sinned in their hearts and did not repent. Rashi says that the second temple sinners practiced wickedness clandestinely. The Maharsha adds that they harbored senseless hatred in their hearts, but in public they ate and drank in a congenial manner with those they hated. Hatred is bad. It destroys, first of all, those who hate. The Talmud even proposes a prayer to be delivered from hatred. Quote, may it be your will, O Lord our God and God of our fathers, that no hatred against any person come into our hearts, and no hatred against us come into the hearts of any other person, and may none be jealous of us, and may we not be jealous of anybody, and may your Torah be our labor all the days of our lives, and may our words be as supplications before you. Unquote. Is any of this happening today in Judaism? There has been a clear and accelerating turn to the right in the past few decades, accompanied by rigidity, especially in Israel. Bitter disputes arise among very observant Jews on what appears to be minor points, although some major points are also in dispute. This by itself is not cause for alarm. The Talmud says clearly that not all disputes are bad. Quote, a controversy for the sake of heaven, mashloket leshem shamayim, will result in something that endures. A controversy that is not for the sake of heaven will not result in something that endures. Which is a controversy for the sake of heaven? The controversy between Hillel and Shammai. And which is not for the sake of heaven? The controversy of Korach and his followers during the Exodus. So how do you know which is which? Investigate the motivation. Is it envy, jealousy, greed, lust, desire for power? Or is it genuine desire to understand Torah? It's not always easy to tell, but it is possible. There is also the phenomenon of Baalei Teshuvah, or newly observant Jews. They frequently want to do more than what the Torah specified. Some say it may be to atone for past non-observance. To them, the Talmud says, quote, Rabbi Yitzhak said, is what the Torah prohibited to you not enough, that you need to also prohibit yourselves things that are permissible? Unquote. This brings us to a discussion of the proper level of tolerance. Many Jews feel that they are standing at the exact ideal place in the wide spectrum of Jewish observance. Everyone to the right of them is a radical religious fanatic, and everyone to the left of them is a secular, godless communist. So, how much tolerance is good? Tolerance is not just theoretical, but has practical implications. What if you can't eat in their house? What if you don't want your children to associate with their children, whom you consider a bad influence? There are 5 degrees of tolerance. I will try to harm you. I will try to stop you. I will not associate with you. I will associate with you with some restrictions, and I will associate with you with no restrictions. We all do some of each, depending on the case. I will try to harm you applied to Nazism. I will try to stop you applied to communism. I will not associate with you might apply to converts out of Judaism. I will associate with you with some restrictions might apply to less observant Jews. And I will associate with you with no restrictions might apply to Jews with different views. Note that the most tolerant are frequently the least observant, but they also assimilate the fastest. Their branch soon dies on the Jewish tree. so broad tolerance is clearly not desirable. What about respect, a word we often hear but seldom define? In practice, respect is granted only item by item, not wholesale. Some items I may agree with and therefore respect. Some items I may disagree with but still respect if I think they represent a defensible point of view. Some items I may disagree with and not respect, for example when other religions portray Jews in negative terms. Let me conclude on a positive note. Rabbi Yehezkel Taub of Kuzmir, the founder of Motzitz Hasidic sect, said that the temple may have been destroyed because of senseless hatred, sinat chinam, but it will be rebuilt one day because of senseless love, ahavat chinam. Hine matov umana'im shevet achim gam yachad. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. Shabbat Shalom.